Hello, and welcome to the Joy of Cooking podcast. Each week, we set the table for a discussion about recipes and stories from the authors of The Joy of Cooking, Kitchen Victories and Misadventures, and most importantly, what we are cooking and eating right now. We're glad you've joined us at the table today. I'm Shannon Larson, home cook, ardent Joy of Cooking user and fan, and persimmon enthusiast.
I'm Megan Scott, co-author of the 2019 edition of Joy of Cooking. I'm a food editor by day and avoider of dish duty by night, and I enjoy cocktails that taste like medicine.
I'm John Becker, fourth generation co-author and steward of The Joy of Cooking, America's oldest family-run cookbook. I make Negronis the wrong way to make my wife happy, and sometimes when I'm cracking eggs to make breakfast, I mistakenly just crack them right into the trash. Usually pretty tired.
Oh, they're getting better and better.
He did do that this week. My intro this week was inspired by, we went to this place to get a bottle of fancy vermouth for a friend's birthday. And we were telling the person at the shop that, we love this particular type of, it's not really vermouth, right? It's kind of a cross between vermouth and
it's an aromatized wine.
Aromatized wine.
I think it's actually made with grape must. It's called Cap Course.
It's very good, and we
very
use
good.
it in our Negronis. But when we said that, he made this face, like he winced, and he was like, "That's like bitter on bitter." And I was like, "Well, I like it when my drink tastes like medicine."
Yes, you like an unbalanced cocktail.
I do. I like an unbalanced cocktail.
Sounds great.
What have you been doing this week, Shannon, cooking wise?
Let's see. I think the best thing I made this week, my husband and I did just a night out in Astoria, Oregon, which is such a cute town.
It's so pretty.
I love it there. I've decided I absolutely love it there. And there's so many sea lions, so I'm just smiling the entire time. And we picked up some fresh halibut on the way back from Belle Bouille in Seaside. And I did Allison Roman's halibut in like a tomato sauce, and it's just poached. It's so simple, so easy. But I have a huge bag of frozen tomatoes from my garden that I just could not get through, which is like the best problem ever to have. And I used those, and it felt like it was really nice because we've been eating kind of heavy because it's winter, a lot of soups and a lot of like heavier stuff. And this was just so light and summery and balanced. It was amazing. We were so happy.
Do you braise the halibut in the tomatoes?
Yeah, you just cook it. It's like genius. I loved it so much.
Yeah, that sounds so good.
It's so good. And like the halibut was perfect. It was great. And we've been eating a lot of oysters too.
I mean,
What
that sounds great.
Not the worst thing.
Yeah, I love oysters.
Yeah.
And it's the season.
It is the season.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
I feel like a dead horse alert, but roasted a chicken.
Roasted a chicken.
Yet again.
Not a horse. And yeah, actually inspired by a discussion of parsnips. We had some, really large parsnips with a really hard core. So I had to remove the core on those, and some celery root was in there, and some onions. And yeah, there was enough schmaltz left over after the vegetables and chicken were done. I poured off some of the fat, deglaze the pan a little to get all the good bits loosened up, and added the fat back in after I kind of evaporated some of that liquid, and then did some nice fried croutons in there. And it's like not a twofer, it's like a threefer. It's so good.
Yeah, that was a very good meal. Anything roasted together like that.
Yeah.
I love that so much. We're kind of working through some freezer things because our freezers just, I don't know, it just happens with freezers.
All of a sudden you're just like,
they're just
what
full of
is in here?
stuff.
Yeah.
And you're like, what is in here? But we had some pulled pork that was left over from like something we did this summer. And we used it in 2 meals. First, we made tostadas, and we had like this red chili sauce that John had made for something else. We had extra. And so we mixed that with the pork and used that on the tostadas. And then we made green pozole with the rest. Excellent meals.
Oh my gosh, so good.
Yeah, so good.
I also do want to plug that you made an incredible spread of black-eyed peas and collard greens that were just, oh my gosh, it was so good. Thank you.
I made all the lucky New Year's foods. When this podcast airs, it will not be close to the New Year, but in real time, we were celebrating the New Year, and I had to make all the traditional Southern lucky foods, the black-eyed peas and collard greens and cornbread, and then I made my mimosa pound cake.
It was delicious.
Which I hadn't made in years, and I forgot how good it was. And everyone was like, "This is so good. What is this?" And I was like, "Oh, it's a pound cake."
It was like perfect. But I have been thinking about your black-eyed peas, and I'm not even a big black-eyed pea fan, but I've been thinking about them since eating them. So, is it a Joy recipe?
I think I was using the Hoppin John, the first part of that recipe because I didn't add rice. There's no rice involved, but yeah. So I think I just cooked them with onion and carrot and celery and garlic.
Well, and with the very important addition of some excellent andouille
Oh,
yeah.
from the Wayne Jacobs Smokehouse.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and speaking of greens, also made a batch of your kale with the garlic and habanero, coconut milk and fish sauce.
Oh yeah, my coconut kale recipe. It's really simple. It's just, and this is actually not in the cookbook. This is something I've been doing since it came out. But I just saute some garlic and habanero. If you don't like it super spicy, I would use like half of a habanero.
Mm-hmm.
And then add the kale, add a little bit of coconut milk to get the kale to start wilting. And then you can kind of add a little coconut milk as needed. I don't like it to be too soupy, just like enough. And then at the end, I add some fish sauce. And it's
so
delicious.
good.
And you don't use the whole can. You probably wouldn't use the whole can unless you were doing like a double batch. I usually use about half of the can of coconut milk.
That sounds incredible.
But we make it all the time. It's so good.
I just wrote all of that down.
This week, we'd like to welcome to the show our guest, Emma Christensen. Emma, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, guys. I'm really happy to be here.
Technically, Emma is my boss's boss, and she's very cool. Emma, would you mind telling us a little bit about what you do and a little kind of short overview of your life in the food world?
Oh my gosh, how much time do we have? So I am the general manager, which is kind of a fancy corporate term for what is essentially an editor-in-chief for Simply Recipes and Spruce Eats. I started working with Meg when she joined us on Spruce Eats, and then we were able to move her over to Simply Recipes, and now she's with us at Simply Recipes. I don't know, I kind of see myself like a mother hen, and I'm just kind of keeping all my little chickens in a pen and, you know, working on the things that they love to work on and finding all the cool things to talk about in the food world. So that's basically my day to day. I'm on Zoom calls a lot, so this is very familiar to me. So that's what I do by day. And then I also am an avid home brewer. So I have a couple cookbooks out about home brewing. If you are interested in home brewing, check them out. They cover beer and hard kombucha and cider and all the most delicious things. Yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell.
I like your description of yourself as a mother hen because you do have kind of mother hen energy. It's very nice, actually.
I accept that and I take that as a compliment.
No, it is a compliment. I'm just thinking of like we used to have chickens when we lived in Tennessee, and we had one that she was very determined to hatch chicks. And one day she just disappeared, and we thought something had happened. Like we were worried she had been eaten. And then like a few weeks later, I'm cleaning out the herb garden, and behind the rosemary bush, I start to hear these little cheep, cheep, cheep sounds. And she's back there with like 17 eggs, and they're all hatching.
Oh my God.
And I was like, now I have to learn what is happening. I have to learn how to deal with chicks now. But she was such a good mama, and they would all tuck themselves into her wings, like under her wings and underneath, and they would poke out from her feathers. So that's how I'm going to think of myself from now on in a Zoom meeting. I'm like sitting under Emma's feathers.
Just poking your little head out from my wings, and I'm keeping you all warm and sheltered.
Thank you. Emma, what have you been eating and cooking this week that you're excited about?
Oh my gosh, this week was kind of recovery from last week. Last week, as you said earlier, we're at New Year's and the holiday time. And so last week I did ribs and mac and cheese and like all these like delicious, delicious things. This week was eating the leftovers and also trying to like have a little bit more normal foods in our diet.
Yeah.
So what did I do? I made a pizza with the leftover ribs. I like shredded the ribs and did, instead of tomato sauce, I put barbecue sauce on the pizza, and then it was red onion, the ribs. What else? Roasted red peppers, and then mozzarella. And then this was not anticipated, but when we were eating it, I was like, this just needs like something. It needs a little something. And so we ended up squirting some just like brown mustard on top and kind of smearing it on top of the cheese, which was not beautiful at all, but it was delicious. And it was like just the right like spicy, acidic note to like cut through the barbecue and all that. Oh, it's probably my favorite thing I've made recently.
John is the expert on using condiments.
I mean, I'm flattered and also embarrassed by that. Yeah, but I do love those counterintuitive and even on first blush, like even kind of potentially like nasty things that end up tasting like super delicious, and it's almost like you're embarrassed to share them sometimes.
Yeah. I'm not embarrassed about this one. It didn't look good, but it tasted delicious. So if you ever need something just a little acidic on your pizza, mustard, give it a try. You heard it here first.
I'm not really a resolutions person, but I do like to kind of set some goals for myself at the beginning of the year. Do you have any cooking related goals for 2025?
I would really like to cook through some of the random stuff that I have stashed away in my freezer and pantry. Like, as a food person, I get sent a lot of stuff. I pick up random things when I see it at the store. I'll use a little bit to try it, and then it goes on the back of the cupboard. And I have just so many half-used things lying around. And yeah, so I guess that would be my resolution. cook through what I have.
Yeah, that's a good one. Sometimes I try to do meal planning on Sundays, not to stick to religiously, but just to like have a kind of idea of what we might do during the week. And sometimes if I'm like, man, we have a lot of random stuff in the freezer, I'll just list out the things that we have and then try to work all the meals around that for a week. And that kind of helps make a dent in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm also just a big fan of soup. Like almost anything can be made into a soup. And so that is my default if I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, cooking hack, make it wetter.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to go into our tasting segment. This week, our theme is cooking with home brew. I didn't make a snack that has home brew in it, but I made something that I think goes well with beer, which is these really delicious chili sumac pomegranate nuts. They're from Nick Sharma's cookbook, Season. It's one of my favorite recipes in the book, and I make it a lot. But it has pomegranate molasses, sumac, which for those who don't know what sumac is, it's like, how do you describe it? It's these little red berries from a shrub that are dried, and then they have to remove the seeds because they have hard seeds inside. But it's just, they're reddish, and they're really tart. It's like a lemony flavor. You can actually grow them. I would love to get a sumac bush for our yard because they're really pretty, but you can grow them across much of North America. But anyway, these are just like slightly sweet, tart, salty nuts. And they also have black salt in them, which is like, it's also called kala namak, and it's a sulfury salt. So it almost has like a pinkish color. It's not like the black lava salt. It's like a sulfury tasting salt that just gives things like a savory flavor that I really like.
Oh, I haven't even heard of black salt, so I'm excited to try this.
I can give you some later and you can cook with it. It's really good on like snacky things, fried things.
Yeah, we should make up a batch of chopped masala just to have around. I feel like we haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah.
I also brought a jar of pickles because it seems just like every Sunday morning when we record, most of the time we have something pickled and I just want to keep it going. And these were made by a previous guest of ours, mom. Carissa Mylan's mom made these. And they are, for some reason, just my all-time favorite pickles. So
they're so pretty in the jar.
They're beautiful.
The jar has like grape leaves in the bottom and then fresh dill, like the dill flower heads. They're just really pretty. Oh, and there's like some red pepper in there.
Yeah. She's given me the recipe like 3 times and I try, but you know, it's kind of like if your mom makes something for you, it just tastes better. So
Emma, I wish you were here to try our snacks.
I also wish I was there to try the snacks. I can see them on the screen and I want to eat them with my mouth.
Pickle time.
That should just be the name of this podcast.
Pickle time?
Pickle time.
Pickle time.
I feel like pickles have made many appearances.
Yeah, those are delicious. And I love these super warty cucumbers.
Warty cucumbers are where it's at. I feel like there's something about them. It's like, I don't know, the warts bring the flavor.
Yeah, the warts bring the flavor.
Yeah, too early for homebrew.
I don't know. It's never too early for homebrew, in my opinion.
Yeah, just make it a shandy.
That's right. Or, you know, like some sort of mimosa-y, beer mosa type thing.
There's got to be a recipe out there for that.
I bet Emma has one.
I did hear a Bloody Mary variant called a Guamanian Bloody Mary. I don't know if it actually is something that is real. I don't know. This was like
Where did you learn about this?
third hand from like a friend of my father, Ethan's. But yeah, it's just like an insane amount of Tabasco sauce and beer.
Ooh.
And it was
Okay.
supposed to be like a Bloody Mary,
Okay.
which doesn't sound like their equivalent at all.
It sounds like a chilada.
Yes.
Yeah.
True.
Okay. Really good pickles. Let's keep this going. Next week, we'll bring some different kind of pickle,
Okay.
no matter what else is going on.
Pickle time all the
Yeah,
time.
I mean, it's not like our producer makes pickles
Yeah.
for a living, so we'll just go into the kitchen and grab something.
Oh, another thing that's in these nuts that I forgot to mention is ground pomegranate seed. It's called anardana, and it also adds a sourness. I actually didn't have any anardana this week, so I think it's called sour grape. It was like this
Right.
powder that we bought just because I was like, what is this? I've never used it before. But we have this container of like powdered, I guess it's just dried and powdered sour grape, and it has it's like very tart and lemony. But yeah, anything sour would be a good substitute for the pomegranate seed if you don't have that in these nuts. But very good recipe from a very good cookbook that was from Season by Nick Sharma, who I need to get on the podcast as well.
I love all of the, I don't know what to call, not citrus analogs, but just like all of the interesting tart ingredients that you can find out there. I'm sure like the green mango powder, pomegranate molasses has a really nice tang to it. Yeah, they're just layering acids like that or tart flavors is so good.
You're a sour person too. Like you're more of a sour person than I enjoy it,
I
but
blame my mother. She was always, I'm trying to remember what those things were called. They were like atomic fireballs, except insanely sour. Like
I know what you're talking about.
to the point where they would
lemon heads.
love lemon heads. They were not those. These would actually, it felt like they were stripping the enamel off your
Yes.
teeth.
Warheads.
Warheads? No.
I know exactly. I can picture them in my mind.
Okay. Well,
Don't worry, you're
I
not
can
alone.
taste them in my mouth. I know exactly what you're talking about too. I feel like they were just called like sour balls.
I think so too.
okay. Well, listeners, if you can help us with this one, we need to know.
Was it lemon flavored though, or were they different flavors?
I feel like it was just so sour that it was beyond.
It didn't matter.
It was beyond flavor. It was just,
Just pure feeling.
yeah, just chemical warfare in your mouth, sour. But my mother was always getting those at Costco.
At Costco, no
At
less.
Costco, she got it at Costco.
Oh, speaking of that article, Emma, about you and your mom going shopping at Costco together was so cute. I loved it so much.
Oh, that's one of my favorites. Like I come across that every now and again, or someone mentions it, and I'm always just like, oh, it was a fun trip and a fun article to write.
Oh my gosh, I loved it. I just was like, I want to go shopping with Emma's mom.
She's a hoot. She's a classic Midwestern mom.
I love it.
And has lots of great ideas for shopping at Costco.
Where was that published, Emma?
That was on thekitchen.com.
Okay.
I was inspired because I need to actually get a Costco membership now that we
Yeah,
have a
you
house.
do.
But it's only me and my husband. And so I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to like buy bulk things for two people who eat a lot of fresh stuff. But actually that article really helped me think through what I should be buying from Costco. So
Yeah.
I'll be using it.
So yay. that
What's
makes
your
me
plan?
happy.
What are you thinking you're gonna get?
Well,
from
I want to
Costco?
try the dried pasta specifically, Emma. I'm sorry, what is your mom's name?
Joyce.
The dried pasta she seems to really like. I forget what the brand was, but I always feel like we always go out to get dried pasta because
Mhm.
usually we make fresh. But sometimes we don't want to make fresh.
Yeah.
So I want to try that one specifically.
Sometimes you don't want to make fresh.
I know. I sound ridiculous.
That's actually my cooking goal for this year is to learn how to make fresh pasta well. I've made it a few times, but never felt really confident about it and never was quite pleased with the way the dough felt. Like it wasn't supple enough. It always wants to be super springy when I've made it.
I don't make a lot of pasta, but I make 99% of the fresh pasta that we eat. And I feel like that's just kind of
How
I
it
don't-
is.
yeah, you want to have a pretty low hydration dough. You don't want too much.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm sure that there's plenty of people out there that would disagree. There's probably a whole genre of pasta that's higher hydration or something, but I don't know. It just seems like, just based on my experience, it's always pretty hard to work with, especially before you let it, kind of relax or rest or whatever it's called.
Mhm. Well, I'll let you teach me how to make
Mhm.
fresh pasta, or you can advise.
Okay, I'll do that. I'm not going to teach you. Jeez.
Emma, tell us about your upcoming book.
Oh, so my book that is coming out in April, I forget the exact date, which is horrible. I should know the exact date, but it's the beginning of April. It's called Hard Seltzer, Iced Tea, Kombucha, and Cider. Very direct and to the point. And it's all about making hard seltzer, hard iced tea, hard kombucha, and hard cider. It's in 4 sections, and every section focuses on a different one of those 4 beverages. And it starts out with like a basic recipe that you can totally riff on, or bring your own flavors to it. And then it goes through like very simple recipes like grapefruit hard seltzer or black cherry hard seltzer, and then all the way up to more complex, in my opinion, interesting types of beverages. So like just to continue the hard seltzer one, later in the chapter, there is a yuzu plum hard seltzer, which is delicious. So good. And then I did a gin and tonic hard seltzer, just like bringing in all the botanicals that you use to make tonic water and basically making a hard seltzer that tastes like gin and tonic. And then every chapter is kind of like that and follows the same format. It was a lot of fun to work through.
Yeah, it was. I got to do a little bit of recipe testing for the book, and I tested a mango nata hard kombucha recipe that tasted delicious. I did find out in the process that I don't really like to homebrew things.
It's a process.
Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah.
It was fun to learn though, and that's what's so fun about recipe testing is like, especially when you've never done a thing before, you get to go through the whole process and see how something is made. So yeah, that was very fun, and it was a delicious recipe. But I'm really excited to see your book come out. Which of the drink categories that you include in the book was the hardest to get right?
Oh God, the kombucha for sure. In fact, when you volunteered for that one, I was a little like, are you sure? It's a lot. But the kombucha, mostly because first you have to make kombucha. Like you just have to make regular everyday kombucha, which is its own learning curve and its own process. And you have to make it fairly regularly in order to make good hard kombucha. That I can go into the science of that if you're interested. That was its own learning curve for me. And then once you have your just like regular everyday kombucha, then you have to turn it into hard kombucha, which is another process. So that was, not only is it my philosophy with all of any homebrewing project and any fermentation project really is, if you desire it, if you crave that reward, you can absolutely make it. But some of them are a little more complex and harder to follow than others. And that would definitely be kombucha.
And you were saying that the kombucha was tricky because for a long time, the end product was just like way too sour.
It was so sour.
Yeah.
It was so sour. And that's when I realized you have to start with really fresh kombucha, which means you need to be in the habit of brewing it. And so like at first, the way I like to just drink everyday kombucha is fairly sour. And so I usually let my kombucha go. If you're familiar with kombucha, you can basically brew it for anywhere from like 5 days if you like a sweeter kombucha, or up to a month if you like more sour kombucha. So I'm definitely on the more sour end of that. I'm like John, I'm a sour fiend. And so I was just, using my regular kombucha, and then by the time you let it ferment another month to make the hard kombucha, it was just like vinegar and absolutely unpalatable. And there was even a point where I was just like, this is not going to work. Like, it's just not possible to make hard kombucha at home. I don't know what's happening here. And then I got more into the habit of only letting that initial batch of basic kombucha go for, I'm forgetting now. I think 10 days is my recommendation for how long to brew that, which is just like, it's like the perfect middle ground where you've fermented out most of the sugar, so it doesn't taste super sweet anymore. And it's definitely like kombucha, but it hasn't tipped the scale into the more acidic category yet. And that you can use to make hard kombucha, and it turns out great. Fantastic.
So what I have learned, I guess, is that I just picked the hardest recipe.
Yes.
I should have picked something else to start with. It's very typical.
Although, I will say, like, the hard kombucha definitely is the hardest one, but the basic process, like how you mix everything together in the fermenter and how you watch for signs that it's fermenting, and then how you bottle it after it's done. Like all of that is the same for everything. So once you kind of learn the basic techniques, then it's just muscle memory, and you can make anything you want. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What brewing project, not just in this book, but in any of the ones that you've published on brewing, what is the one that has like the lowest barrier of entry, I guess, just as far as like time spent and likelihood of success?
Probably the hard seltzer, because when you make hard seltzer, what you're basically doing is making hard water. Like you combine sugar and water to make sugary water, throw in some yeast, that ferments, and you make basically a tasteless water alcohol. And then to that, you add any of the flavors that you want on top of it. And you can use extracts, you can use juice, you can use fresh fruit, you can use frozen fruit, you can use anything. So yeah, making hard seltzer is pretty easy. And I think if you did it like brewing, like again, like any fermentation project, has the windows where things happen, and you can have it be a really short window or a longer window. Anyway, so with hard seltzer, if you do the shortest window, I think you could brew it and then drink it in probably 3 weeks if you really were diligent about it.
Okay. Well, we should try that, because I like the sound of the yuzu one you were talking about, and I haven't really had any hard seltzer, like store-bought hard seltzer that I loved, So I would definitely try making that.
Well, and yeah, citrus season's coming up here.
Yeah.
I mean, we're practically in it, so.
Yeah, I'm with you. The store-bought hard seltzers I can't get into. They taste, I know you like medicinal drinks, but those taste a little medicinal in like a different
in a bad way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, a
Or
lot of
just
them
fake.
have artificial sweeteners.
Yeah,
in
that's
it.
what
And I
I-
feel like
ugh.
that gives it a weird,
Yeah, I don't like that.
that like bad medicinal like aftertaste.
Yeah. Doesn't make my tongue very happy.
Yeah.
I was just curious, do you have 3 favorite easy weeknight meals that you tend to go to? I'm always looking for personal inspiration myself. This is a very selfish question.
Well, I think that the easiest meals to make are the ones that you've made so many times that you don't have to think about it anymore, and you can riff on it. You always have the ingredients. So that's how I define easy, by the way, just as a preface. And so my go-to meals would probably be pizza. I probably make pizza, including the dough, like once a week. I usually make it on Friday, and then we eat it all weekend long. I make this like totally inauthentic, like Thai noodle curry thing that is just so delicious. I mean, it's basically like creamy coconut with rice noodles and then whatever vegetables I have, and I'll throw those in.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, I just made this week, I do this kind of like bastardized beef stroganoff kind of a thing where it's just ground beef, mushrooms, onions, sour cream, mustard. I like mustard in my stroganoff. It adds just a little something. And those are probably, I make those kind of a lot.
I love it. They're all 3 so different too.
Yeah.
You're gonna get completely
like
different
whatever
flavors.
you feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels like the beef stroganoff I grew up eating. It sounds similar. Did you say do you use ground beef or like sliced?
I use ground usually,
Yeah.
or sometimes if I don't have ground beef, I'm a big fan of chicken sausage. I just throw it in the freezer, and then I always have chicken sausage. So if I don't have anything else, I'll thaw a couple links of that and chop it up and put that in.
Yeah, my mom used to make something really, really similar that we called stroganoff. And then I grew up and I was like, oh, this is, it's delicious.
It is not, yeah,
but it's not quite.
Yeah, Midwestern version
Yeah,
of stroganoff, Americanized.
Creamy mushroom meat gravy.
Yes. That sounds delicious.
I have a knack for naming recipes.
It's like you should do that for a living or something.
Yeah. Emma, as a Midwesterner, are there any foods that you get homesick for that no one on the West Coast understands?
Oh, gosh. I think the 2 things that come immediately to mind are scotcheroos or scotcheroos. I've always said them scotcheroos, even though they're spelled scotcheroos. There's a recipe that just went up on Simply Recipes, which I tested. It's basically like a peanut buttery Rice Krispie treat with a layer of, it's a mix of like chocolate and butterscotch on top. Oh, they're so good. If you've never had one, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just go immediately and make them. They're so easy. And when I grew up there, they were at like every single potluck, every single birthday party, every single picnic. Like that was the thing. And I can taste it in my mouth right now. And they're like chewy. Oh, I could talk forever about it. That and anything rhubarb. There's like, you cannot get rhubarb out here on the West Coast or where I live in California.
Yeah, we've lucked out I feel like we have a really good rhubarb.
Yeah, you should
here.
come visit.
Yeah, come visit,
stock
Emma.
up.
Yes. Well, I think I might try to grow it. I don't know if
yeah.
it'll grow down here. It's pretty warm. I'm in zone
Mm.
10, and I think rhubarb is like good up to zone like 8, 9, but I might try.
Yeah. I mean, worth it. You know, it doesn't seem that hard to grow, and maybe a start would be like $5 or something. So
Yeah.
worth a try.
Yeah. I mean, in the Midwest, they grow like weeds. Like
Yeah.
I feel like rhubarb is like zucchini, where everyone during rhubarb season is just trying to get rid of it, and you go to each other's houses and just like, I don't know, collectively do things with rhubarb. But here, yeah, it will take a little bit more effort, I think.
I would love to plant rhubarb in our yard, and I've thought about it, but we have it's pretty the leaves are poisonous, and we have one cat that goes outside from time to time. Don't worry, she is elderly, and she is not a threat to any bird or squirrel or any living thing. Yeah, no, she's not. But yeah, she likes to nibble on things, and I would worry that she might get into the rhubarb and try it. So maybe one day we'll have a rhubarb plant.
Maybe you could put it in your like front yard or side
Yeah.
yard.
Yeah, I just need to get more creative.
I don't know. I feel like cats and outdoor animals are pretty smart, and they're not gonna like seriously hurt themselves. Well, I don't know. I should caveat that. I don't know about rhubarb. I have a lot of houseplants, and I've occasionally worried about my cats and the houseplants. But I find like if they nibble it and then their mouth, like, you know, they'll get like a tingly in their mouth or something like that, and then they don't eat it anymore, and problem solved.
Maybe your cats
everything's
are
fine.
smarter than ours.
Yeah, you haven't met Loki.
Yes, it does depend on your cat.
She does not have street smarts and cannot identify plants. I feel like we caught her nibbling on some foxglove, and that was kind of what did it.
Yeah, I had bought a foxglove start to put in the yard, or a little foxglove plant, and I'd set it on the dryer in our garage, and just for a minute while I was doing something else, and she did take a little nibble, and it's extremely poisonous, and it freaked me out, and I threw it immediately in the compost. I was like, we just can't have this plant in our yard.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well,
yeah.
Keep Loki safe.
Keep Loki
Just
safe.
Everybody stay safe.
Emma, where can listeners follow you?
Probably the best place is Instagram, and my handle is Christensen Emma. Some people occasionally call me Christian Cinema. They don't realize that my name is just inverted. So yeah, Christensen Emma on Instagram and any of the other social media platforms. Or Simply Recipes. Come check out Simply Recipes. See all the fine work that both Meg and I do, and all of our great colleagues.
And make sure to pre-order Emma's book, which is called Hard Seltzer, Iced Tea, Kombucha, and Cider, which is coming out in April. But pre-orders always help.
Thank you. Thanks for plugging my book. I'm bad at plugging my own stuff.
Okay, so now we're going to move into the segment where we answer a listener question. And this week we're talking about cooking with homebrewed beer. Sarah, can you read the text?
My brother gifts me his home brew every year. I am not a big beer drinker. Any good recipes that call for home brew?
This is a really good question, and I'm so stoked, Emma, that you're with us this week, because I feel like you must have so much experience. Since you've written so many books and homebrewing is something you do a lot, you must have experience cooking with it, I hope.
Well, I generally drink all of my homebrew.
That's a testament to how good you are at brewing.
I feel like if I'm going to go through all the effort of making a homebrew, or I mean, this is no dig on this caller or this writer-inner, but if you know, it's a lot of work to make homebrew. I'm going to drink it. I'm not going to like put it in something. But if you want to use it in recipes, gosh, it depends on what kind of beer it is. Generally, darker beers are a lot easier to cook with. So like brown ales, stouts, porters, anything that's not hoppy tends to be good to cook with. If it is hoppy, if it's like an IPA or a pale ale, you know, anything that has a lot of hops in it, you can use it as a marinade, a finishing kind of a, like almost like adding a splash of wine at the end of something, mostly because if you cook it too long, an IPA or a hoppy beer, those bitter flavors come out really harshly and just they're not great. So yeah, use anything that has hops as a marinade or just like a splash at the end. But brown ales, the darker ales, things that aren't hoppy, I throw them in soups, chili. You can use it as a marinade too. It would make a great batch of ribs with the brown ale.
Oh yeah, I bet that would.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were kind of on the same page. I don't know if I've ever tried to cook with an IPA just because I worry about the bitterness kind of taking over.
Yeah, I think it would probably be okay if you were to make up a beer batter with IPA because I don't know.
Yeah,
But
like for
yeah,
frying.
for frying.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I feel like that would be good.
Yeah, like you said, we have not tried to cook with IPA very much.
I think you could probably put it in like a splash in a salad dressing because I think that the tartness and like the bitterness would go together, especially with fresh greens.
So that'll use two
Two
tablespoons.
tablespoons of that. But yeah, and for dark beer, I really like dark beer in baking. So I'll use, like, if it's a stout, there's always stout chocolate cake. That's delicious. Or a lot of rye bread recipes use beer. And dark beers are really good with rye bread. There's also there's a recipe in Joy for beer cheese bread. That's delicious in a dark beer. Or even, I think for that, you could use a range of different styles.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I agree with you, Emma. Like the hops is pretty much makes it like not versatile at all. Definitely lighter lagers and stuff like that. Or it seems like that would be fine. We use Mexican lagers like as kind of a supplement to bean cooking liquid.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
That would be amazing.
It's
yes.
so good. Yeah, just starting it off with some onions, some serrano, some garlic, then add the beans that have already hopefully been cooked a little bit beforehand, and then just finish it off with some beer and maybe a dried chipotle and some Mexican oregano, maybe a bay leaf. So good.
Yum. Yeah, we make something like that all the time. You can also use some styles of beer to simmer sausages like bratwurst, especially like Sheboygan style brats. You simmer them in like a beer and butter and onion bath before. Is it before or after grilling?
I've tried both. There are advantages to doing it both ways. If you simmer the brats first and then throw them on the grill, it's like they're already cooked through. All you have to do is worry about getting color on the outside of the brat. So that's nice. On the other hand, if you put grill marks on them and then put them into the simmering beer onion mixture, people can just take them out of there whenever they want. And so makes serving a breeze. So,
And it keeps them warm and kind of keeps them from drying out.
exactly.
Yeah. We did also talk about, Emma, you mentioned chili. There's a chili recipe in Joy called Rock Castle chili that uses beer. I forget what it calls for specifically, but
I think it's a dark lager.
okay.
Yeah.
That's an excellent recipe. Can you John, can you tell a little bit of the Rock Castle? Like, why is it called Rock Castle chili?
Oh, it's my father and a bunch of his buddies would go camping on the Rock Castle River in Kentucky. And yeah, just became this camp chili that they would make. 3 types of beans in that chili. Not exactly sure why. I mean, it's nice to have a little variety, I suppose. But you render out some bacon, and then you brown the onions and some chopped up chuck in that, and then beans, beer, lots of chili powder. The heavier on the ancho, from what I remember, and cumin. I would add more cumin than my father and his buddies would, but that's just my own personal preference.
That sounds delicious. I might have to make that this weekend.
There's also we were talking earlier about the nuclear option. If the beer is really like, you just really don't know what to do with it and maybe you don't want to drink it, you can turn it into vinegar. So John, would you share a little bit about turning it into vinegar?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've never done this, but a contributor to the 2019 edition, Hank Shaw, has a process for it published on his website. It's a Hunt Gather Cook blog. But yeah, it sounds like he makes it sound like it's easier than making wine vinegar because the alcohol percentage is apparently ideal for letting the acetic acid bacteria to thrive. So yeah, and it just ends up being kind of like mulled vinegar. And of course, different beers will result in very unique vinegars.
Do you remember if you said you could just use a vinegar mother, from an apple cider vinegar jar, or?
Yeah, I feel like there's really no special requirement for, I just want to say this, the acetobacter, the vinegar mother. So yeah, I think that just the wispy stuff and your apple cider vinegar would probably be fine.
That would be a fun project too. I've made it with wine before, and I remember I just poured the wine into a jar and then added a certain amount of raw apple cider vinegar, and then put like a cloth over the top with a rubber band and let it hang out for, I don't even remember, a few months probably. But it was pretty easy. It was really hands off.
We have like a whole vinegar making handbook that I have yet to really delve into. It's like always your eyes are hungry or whatever.
Yeah, eyes are bigger than your
Stomach.
stomach. I don't
Vinegar,
know.
tummy.
Something. If you have a topic, ingredient, or joy story to share, call our hotline at 503-395-8858. Leave us a message or send us a text. We would love to hear from you. Next week's topic comes from our texter.
Hi, Joy of Cooking podcast. Do you have any favorite recipes that use olives? No specific kind of olives. Any olives welcome. Thank you.
Fun.
I'm excited
I
about
have
that
so
one.
many ideas.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. What are we thinking about this week? What's coming up for you, Shannon, cooking wise, eating wise?
Well, I think the last time we talked, I had planned on making chili and I never got to it. And then we're talking about your chili. And so I think I'm just adding that to the menu this week.
Yeah.
I also really want to, it's going to be kind of nicer this week. So I was even thinking about getting the grill out and just, while it's not raining,
Yeah.
put some stuff on the grill. Why not?
Yeah.
Build a fire.
May I suggest Kumi's recipe for makni masala that's in the book?
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
ready to
that
go.
one is so good.
It's really good.
You
I
marinate
mean,
the chicken in like a yogurt marinade, then you grill it or broil it. There's an
Yeah.
option for broiling if you don't have a grill, or it's just you can't grill right now. And then you take the grilled chicken and then put it in the makni sauce.
Oh my gosh, that
and
sounds
it's
amazing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Highly recommend.
Great. Thank you. What about you two? Do you have any special things on your menu this week? I love seeing your menu plan every week that you sometimes you post it.
Well, I'm gonna do that this afternoon. Make
Okay.
my meal plan. I'm kind of recommitting to it because I was mentioning earlier that we don't adhere to it religiously. Like
Mhm.
sometimes I'll make a meal plan and then for some reason it just doesn't work out to make a thing, or we swap days around, or we swap in something else at the last second. But I don't love making a meal plan all the time. But the alternative is that every day at 4 p.m.
Mhm.
John peeks his head into the office and is like, dinner thoughts? And I'm always like, my brain hurts. I
Yeah.
can't think of anything. I don't know what I want. And so
I try to bring it up as gently as possible.
I know you do. It's really not, it's not a you problem. This is why the meal plan is good. It takes the stress level down for me about making decisions.
Yeah.
Like at least even if I don't know what I want to eat, I have my meal plan. I can be like, oh, let's just make that thing that I already.
Yeah, and you don't have to follow it exactly.
Exactly.
If something else sounds good to you based on your mood or whatever, just go with that. I feel like sometimes I make it too exact. I like
Mhm.
it's too structured for me, and I like when you show what your meal plan is because it inspires me to even actually do one. So you should
Yeah.
continue that.
Okay.
please.
Accountability buddy.
Yes, please.
What about you, Emma? What are you doing this week? Cooking this week?
I think I might make that chili. Rockwell chili, is that what it was?
Rock Castle.
Rock Castle chili. Okay, I've got my Joy of Cooking like right next to me, so I'm
Nice.
gonna after we're off, I'm gonna bookmark that page. That, and then I've had my eye on this coconut miso salmon curry that's on the New York Times. I've had my eye on
Ooh.
that for a long time, and I think this is the week that I'm gonna make it.
Emma, my husband and I have made that like 4 or 5 times. It is so good. It's like it's one of my favorites. It's one of my weeknight go-tos.
Do you add any other vegetables to it? Because I don't think there's much in it.
It's easy for me at that point to just like go into my it's one of those recipes that whatever you have in your fridge that looks good, like I add a ton of spinach and all of this other stuff, like whatever you have available that looks good, just throw it in there. It'll be delicious. But the salmon always turns out perfect.
Mhm.
I'm so good. As Meg knows, I am on a quest to learn how to cook salmon. I feel like it's my Achilles heel. Like I don't know. I have like a block and just like can't cook good salmon. And so I'm forcing myself to try all the recipes. And I'm glad to hear this one is a winner.
Yeah, and I think cooking fish like that in general in a broth just makes it so much easier instead of like putting it on the stovetop or whatever. It's like foolproof a little bit.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to the Joy of Cooking podcast. Before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Follow us on Instagram at The Joy of Cooking. Stay tuned for next week, where we'll talk about recipes that use olives. Call in with questions, hopes, history, or where you find joy in the kitchen. Our number is 503-395-8858. That's 503-395-8858.
We cannot do this without our fantastic team at the Joy of Creation Production House. Thank you to Dave Drusky, our production coordinator, Haley Bowers, our audio engineer, and Sarah Marshall, our producer.